Cindy, you're covering this trip. What do we know about Tsai's agenda in the U.S.?
Yes, hi. So Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-Wen just landed in the U.S. a few hours ago. And in about 30 minutes or so, Tsai will show up in her first public event on the U.S. soil. That's a dinner banquet with the Taiwanese in New York and in the U.S. President Tsai will give a speech, and we're told that there will be other U.S. politicians joining the event too and give the speech. But so far, her office has kept the names, the details of the U.S. guests very secretive. And the reason why President Tsai's office has to be so low-key about this trip is that U.S. and Taiwan don't really have official ties, and this is an unofficial visit of this Taiwanese president. And just hours before she boarded on the plane to the U.S., China has already warned that if Tsai will have a meeting with U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, that would be a serious provocation, and China would definitely take measures to respond to that. So that's something we will keep a close eye on in the following days during her trip in the U.S. and then to the Central America.
Cindy, in terms of business deals and tangibles, what are both sides hoping to achieve? Because we know that bringing the most sophisticated of chip makers from Taiwan to the U.S. market is going to be key for Biden.
Yes, we know that U.S. President Joe Biden wants to attract the most advanced chip makers from Taiwan to invest in the U.S., such as TSMC. But the Taiwanese officials and companies have been pushing hard for an agreement from the U.S. to eliminate the burden of double taxation, just as U.S. did with many other countries. But one of the biggest issues is that U.S. hasn't formally recognized Taiwan as a sovereign nation. So any kind of treaty that U.S. signed with Taiwan would further escalate the tension that U.S. and China already has. So that's going to be a big issue for the U.S. government to think about how to attract the Taiwanese chip maker to invest in the U.S. while at the same time not further escalate the tension it already has with China. So the U.S. government certainly has to come up with some creative ways to deal with this issue. Just like President Tsai's visit to the U.S. this time, this is also a creative arrangement that President Tsai is expected to meet with the House Speaker McCarthy on the U.S. soil, unlike last year when then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan, and that led to a very strong reaction from China. So any creative arrangement from the U.S. With the Taiwanese government is going to reduce the tension with China and also satisfy the companies and officials' needs to eliminate the double taxation issue.
At the same time, this is so interesting, at the same time that Tsai Ing-Wen is in the U.S., the former Taiwan President Ma Ying-jeou is the first former president of Taiwan to visit China. How do we read this visit, particularly the significance of it going into the fact that we know that Beijing's been making these overtures ahead of the election next year?
Exactly. President Tsai's U.S. visit comes at a very critical time for Taiwan. It's not only because U.S. and China relations at the worst point in probably decades. It's also because Taiwan is going to hold a very crucial presidential election in the coming January. This election will not only decide the future of Taiwan, but also could have significant implications to U.S., China, and Taiwan relations going forward. So we would see that President Tsai is now visiting U.S. That's her first overseas trip in over 3 years. And at the same time, we see the former Taiwan President Ma Ying-jeou visiting China. And also another presidential hopeful, that's Terry Gou, Foxconn's technology group's founder, is also visiting the U.S. this week, overlapping Tsai's U.S. visit. So it's interesting to see whether Terry Gou would hold any briefing in the following days addressing to Tsai or addressing to Taiwan. He is obviously trying to use the U.S. trip as a bargain power for the opposition party KMT to nominate him for the presidential candidate. Whether he would succeed or not, it remains to be seen. And so that's something worth keeping an eye on in the following days.